Welcome to the ExecMBA podcast. I'm your host, Brett Twitty, and you are listening to a new episode. On this episode of the podcast, I'm excited to share my recent conversation with Nate Scott. Nate is a first-year student in our Executive MBA class of 2022, and he is also a journalist. And, fun podcast note, he also works on a podcast for Wondery and USA Today called The Sneak. Of course, we talk about his podcast, we talk about his MBA journey, why he chose Darden, and so much more. I think you're really going to enjoy this conversation. So without further ado, here is my interview with Nate Scott. Nate, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, Brett. Excited to be here.
So I've informally been referring to this episode as the Inception episode because you have a podcast that you work on, and you're now on a podcast. So a little bit like a dream within a dream, or at least that's how I'm building it in my mind. So welcome to this podcast.
I'm so excited to be here. I'm excited to be on one that's not my own, and you can edit my voice and listen to it over and over instead of me having to do that.
For our listeners, tell us a little bit more about your podcast. We're going to get into your MBA journey, but I did want to start here because it's a really, really interesting podcast. So tell us more.
Yeah, I work at USA Today, and I host a podcast for them called The Sneak, which we co-produce with Wondery, which is an incredible podcast company that has been really helpful for me. But The Sneak is an investigative true crime podcast that looks into stories in and around the world of sports. We're not really a sports podcast. We're really an investigative true crime podcast. And we've put out 2 seasons so far. They've been wonderful. And we are now producing our 3rd season, which we're hoping will come out in late February, early March.
Feels like there's a lot of competition for ears in the true crime podcast world. This is, in fact, looking at Spotify just a few days ago, there's a whole folder just devoted to true crime in podcasts. So how do you gain listener share? I mean, is it the story that you have? Is it the production value? Is it people just knowing Wondery and have a lot of respect for what Wondery does? Curious.
Having Wondery and the USA Today brands was unbelievably helpful because it really just allowed us to get us a foot in the door. And then we were also very lucky in that Apple chose us as one of their featured new podcasts when we released season 1. And, without that, who knows? I think it would have been a much slower, more organic build of audience, but because we had those brands behind us and because Apple gave us this gift, really, you don't know, you kind of make a request and then you cross your fingers, but Apple picked us, and then that really allowed us to reach a pretty big audience pretty quickly, and since then it's just grown.
So you mentioned you're working on season 3 right now. That'll be out soon. At this point, do you have the stories that you want to talk about as you go from season to season? Do you kind of know what you want to do? Are people coming to you with ideas? Hey, did you know about this particular thing? Where does the inspiration come from?
My co-producer and co-writer on the show is a guy named Anthony Pacillo. He and I actually went to high school together, and Anthony is an incredible writer in Hollywood. He worked on Game of Thrones. He sold shows to AMC. And so he and I kind of come at it from 2 very different angles. He's a natural storyteller. I'm a reporter. And so it's really a collaboration between him and I. With season 1, we picked a kind of, as far as true crime goes, a lighthearted story. It was about a former college football player who robbed a Brinks truck and escaped in an inner tube down a river and was nicknamed DB Tuber off of DB Cooper. And that was us having a blast with kind of a Logan Lucky Ocean's 11 type story, which we really wanted to tell. And then with season 2, we stumbled upon this story about a national surfing champion who then robbed the Museum of Natural History. And we thought very much heading into the season, this was going to be a 60s period piece, kind of Ocean's 11 style heist show. But then we found out that the culprit, the main character, had actually been convicted of murder, which he had pretty successfully swept under the rug. And so we actually tracked down the family of the 2 women who he had been convicted of murdering. And it ended up being a very different story. We always have 5 or 6 stories kind of kicking around in the back of our head that we want to do. this new story that we've chosen for season 3, which takes place in the world of NASCAR, we very much wanted to try a story where we didn't know the ending. In the first 2 seasons, we knew exactly how it was going to begin and end. This season, we are looking for someone who's disappeared, which means that a lot more reporting, a lot fewer questions we can answer. And that was something that was a challenge that we wanted to take on.
Well,
I hope that answers your question.
Absolutely. Gosh, I could talk podcasts all day. We just do a business school podcast where we talk about the Executive MBA program here, but it's so interesting to hear about the work that you're doing. And I appreciate all the Steven Soderbergh references here early on in our conversation. Legend. So
He's our
good.
hero. He's our hero. We referenced him a lot in kind of the stylistic choices in season 1 and 2. Season 3, going to be a bit more Coen brothers, I think. And actually, Zodiac from David Fincher has been our guiding light for season 3 in terms of how we're thinking about the storytelling.
So many good movie recommendations here for our listeners who have not seen Zodiac. It is, it shows up on a lot of your streaming services these days. It's got a great cast: Downey, Ruffalo, Gyllenhaal. Supposedly the movie that nearly broke Jake Gyllenhaal. David Fincher is notorious for let's take that one more time. 90 plus takes of some scenes.
Oh my goodness.
So if you have not had a chance to watch it, you're looking for a cliffhanger, sort of in the vein of the sneak here. Be worth a couple hours on a weekend. Nate, as a journalist, is it different being behind the microphone versus writing something, or is it all kind of part and parcel of the same thing these days?
Podcasting is a very different art form. You can do a lot more kind of from a storytelling perspective. With journalism, there's a necessary detachment. With a podcast, I'm a character, which is at times uncomfortable. And we really resisted it at first. And then we realized to tell the story, you kind of had to get to know me, my journey, my emotional pull for why I was investigating these stories. And as a journalist, that's like, it feels weird, but that is something that I've learned to embrace a little bit and have a lot of fun with. With podcast also, there's just so many things on the production side you have to think of. When you're writing, you can really just kind of take notes or talk for an hour and just pull out the 1-2 sentence quote you really want. And with podcasting, you have to be very mindful of how things are told, who's speaking, the audio quality of what's happening, background, there's just a lot more to consider.
It seems like a part of the journalism equation, though, these days. If you think about all the news outlets that have podcasts now, some of them story-driven, some of them news-driven. I've talked to so many prospective students who have made The Daily or the Washington Post podcast, or just these kind of podcasts as a way of just keeping tabs on what's going on in the world. It seems like it's part of the journalism landscape these days. It's probably not going away anytime soon. Yeah,
no, it's been wild to see how this world has kind of developed and very, very quickly. And, now it's almost inundated. But, I do think that it's a powerful tool. And I do think people are making it part of kind of the fabric of their lives, podcasts. And what was really interesting with the pandemic was seeing in the early months, it just dropped totally because people were used to listening on their commutes. And once commutes went away, podcast audiences almost evaporated. And then slowly over the course of the pandemic, they came back up and people found new ways to incorporate the listening experience into their daily life. And now we're growing again. And that's been something that's, I think a lot of people thought like, okay, this is the death knell. And then watching as people kind of reincorporated these podcasts into their lives has been really interesting to watch.
It's very interesting. Well, let's talk a little bit more about you. I'm sure we'll come back to some of these themes as we work through our conversation, but you already talked a little bit about your background, but tell us your story. What do you do currently, and what did you do prior coming to Darden, academically, professionally?
So hosting the Sneak is part of my role at USA Today. I'm also the managing editor of a website called For the Win, which is a sports and entertainment blog that is owned by USA Today. And we were really one of the first kind of engineered for social media sports blogs that was launched by a traditional newspaper. And I was actually part of the founding of For the Win, which was back in, I don't know, six or 7 years ago. And yeah, I've been working in journalism pretty much my whole professional life. I went to undergrad at Tulane University. My first day was Katrina. Evacuated to, got out with my mom. We rented a minivan, one of the last rental cars in the city, got out. And then I ended up at Dartmouth College for a semester and went back to Tulane. And I was really heading on the academic track. I was English major, got a master's in literature, was looking at PhD programs, thought that was going to kind of be my life, was academia. And then I basically decided to give the writing thing one shot, moved out to San Francisco and started freelancing and got lucky with a few placements, and then launched my own blog, helped develop some online digital properties, and then USA Today had this idea for this sports and culture website, and I jumped at the opportunity and I've been kind of doing that ever since. So kind of stumbled into journalism, but here I am still making a go at it.
It feels like of the journalists we've had on the show, and it's been fun. I mean, one of the great things about this podcast is we get to talk to so many different kinds of people, but we certainly had journalists in our executive MBA program. We have the Batten Media Scholarship. It certainly helps promote that interest. To a person, all of the journalists have kind of talked about the transitioning of the model of journalism, the business model, the challenges that are there. Is this something that you're also thinking about, that you're also passionate about?
Every minute of every day, and why I'm here at Darden, to be blunt. That is working at a digital outlet at a traditional newspaper has allowed me to kind of honestly see every day kind of these two forces, this traditional model, the new model, the friction there, the excitement, the tension, all that's, we're really kind of rebuilding the plane as we're flying it. And, for me, my mom was a newspaper journalist. I have such reverence for my colleagues at USA Today and the pioneering they did and the work they've done. And for me, it's really about showing those guys kind of new distribution models to basically, package and honestly kind of remarket the traditional journalism and great work that they do. And, figuring out how to take what was being done and what's happening now. That's what I think about every day.
It's one of these moments too, where I think this sort of getting people to pay for something seems to be one of the challenges too, right? So for news gathering outlets, you consistently hear these sort of calls like, do you appreciate what we do, all the work that we put into this, the talent that we have? I wonder if it's hard to get people to think about paying for something where like information on the internet seems so abundant, and yet there are sources that people turn to regularly and value those sources.
Yeah, I mean, that's our new challenge right now. People were trained to pay for media for decades upon decades. And then with the early .com boom, there was so much money in online advertising that we didn't really, and also the methods to pay for subscriptions was so clunky and horrible that there was seen as no need to do that. You could kind of make really successful businesses purely through online advertising. Then Google and Facebook figured that part out, and now we're kind of retrying to figure that part out. And honestly, what we're understanding now is that to be the big national brand that people pay for is very difficult. That is something that is hard to do if you're not the New York Times, Washington Post, maybe USA Today. That's what we're working towards. However, niche communities, people who care very deeply about one thing, they might and have shown they will. And that's something that in the sports space, The Athletic is really leaning into hard, where they are not targeting kind of national audiences. They're targeting fans of a certain team and offering really in-depth, great journalism for Steelers fans and for Broncos fans. And that is kind of what we're seeing now, is a shift from audience, which was always the idea for about 10, 15 years there. Grow as big an audience as possible. Doesn't matter how, just grow a huge audience. Now we're more focusing on, okay, we know how to do that. Now can we build communities, and communities of people who care passionately about certain topics? And then can we create enough good, vital content that they feel the need that's something that they're willing to pay monthly for?
So you talked about your journey, educational journey, and you thought you were going to go this academia route around English, and and you've become a journalist. Is an MBA something that you thought about for a long time, or is it a relatively recent idea?
Very recent. I had a master's in English, and I thought, you know what, I've did my grad degree. I'm done with academia. I'm done. I'm out. And I thought that way for a long time. And then as I'm certain is true of most people in this program, or at least those I've met, hit kind of an inflection point in my career where I had sat in on a lot of pitches for ideas that I had that I thought were strong. And there would always come to a point in the meeting where they'd say, all right, well, how is this going to make money? And I'd shrug and say, I talk to the business guys about it. I don't know how that'll make money. That was and that was frustrating for me because I just couldn't provide that part of the equation. And so I really was just totally reliant on finding the right business partner within the organization to kind of sell an idea. And when I did that, like I did with the Sneak, I found the right partner, a guy I worked with named Scott Stein, who saw the vision, got buy-in from Wondery, made that happen. The whole thing took off. Scott's a busy guy. He can't do that with every little idea I have. And for me, it was, okay, I need to be able to have that part of the conversation. I need to be able to make not only the editorial case and the audience case, but the financial case as well. And that was when I really started thinking, okay, maybe this is the time to explore an MBA. And then things, I was probably thinking a year out, and then things with Darden came together very quickly, and here I am.
I wonder what about Darden really resonated with you? What kind of pushed you from saying, oh, I'm just thinking about an MBA, this might be a little while, to like, this is the school that I want to go to?
So I was initially looking at other schools that were very online, not as much time commitment, just like, let me just bang this out. Let me get the 3 letters at the end of my name and be done with it. And I just need to learn these concepts and learn this lexicon. And that's what I will do. And then I talked to a few friends who had gone through an MBA program, and they said, you need to look at Darden. You need to look at the bigger schools in your area, because the quality of education, the network that comes with it, your classmates, it's just throw your hat in the ring and see what happens. And I said, okay, I'll throw my hat in the ring. And that, I don't know. I didn't think I was probably a strong enough candidate, just because I haven't taken a math class since I passed the AP Calc exam my senior year of high school. And I probably shouldn't be admitting that to you, but you already let me in. So anyway, I thought, okay, whatever, I'll have a meeting. And then I met with Catherine Alford, and I actually was pretty upfront. And I said, hey, I don't know if I'm going to be able to hang academically. I don't know if I'm the right candidate. I'm a very kind of unusual candidate. And she said, that's why we're interested in you. And that's why we want you. It's because you bring something that no one else can. And that was when I started really taking it seriously and really started doing my research and really started saying like, okay, maybe this is the place for me. And that's what led to me being here.
I love that conversation that you had with Catherine, because I think it does underscore so much about what we love about our jobs as admissions folks is we get to meet so many interesting people. And our goal for the class is to have as much difference as possible in the classroom. So 135 people with different backgrounds, different lived experience, different work experience, different passions, interests, all kind of coming together. And I think the way that you learn at Darden gives you a great opportunity, right? It's case method, it's discussion based. It's a great opportunity to experience that difference and to kind of see, gosh, so many interesting people here. I think that's at least our hope. Nate, you're in quarter 3 of the program now. How's it going so far?
It's, I have been blessed with what I believe is the greatest learning team in the history of Darden. And I don't care what anyone else says. That's what I believe in my heart of hearts. And I know it's true. And getting to know my LT5 working together has been such a joy. And they have made the entire experience fulfilling and enriching. And they've carried me like a Sherpa through some of the accounting and finance courses, and I love them for it. But honestly, the one thing I'm itching is for all of us to really get back together in person, and that's been sort of the only part that feels a little wanting right now. Is I just I want to see my classmates. I want to get in person, but hopefully that will be soon.
There have been some opportunities for your class to come for in-person delivery
Yes.
for hybrid classes. And we also, even this past weekend, I believe, students could come even though quarter 3 classes are virtual for your class. There was still an opportunity if people wanted to come to Sands Family Grounds and follow the health and safety protocol, they could be there.
Yeah.
That was, for us, from the program side, was kind of interesting because I think we had originally thought, unless people have class, will people want to come and be together? And no surprise, given the sort of emphasis on culture and community and the fact that people choose this program because of community oftentimes as part of their reasons. People wanted to come. I think it was about 40 people who showed up at Sands Family Grounds. Have you been able to participate in any of these in-person opportunities?
Yes, one in Rosslyn. I haven't made it down to Charlottesville yet, but we, my whole crew got COVID tests. Our learning team, we went and got a few outdoor meals together, and I've gotten to meet a few of my classmates that way. And we've really adapted. I mean, we have a WhatsApp as a cohort. We have a Slack. We have and we are all communicating constantly. I think as evidenced by 40 people showing up, I think there is, that hunger, that drive for us all to get together. Because honestly, that's, our professors excellent, the curriculum amazing, but the people, that's been for me kind of, every breakout in a Zoom we get where we get to meet in small groups, that's like the joy. That's the, getting to know, getting to connect, meet so many interesting people. That's been the best part.
Nate, I'm curious. I want to pick up on some things you said here. So you mentioned not having a lot of quant in your background, leaning on your learning team. You've taken accounting and now finance and decision analysis, global economics. Our program does have a fair amount of quantitative work. How did you navigate those courses? It sounds like it was a team-based approach, but I wonder, at the end of the day, reflecting on that, what was that experience?
I have been surprised at my aptitude in some of these, which I did not think I would have. I'm sitting down in decision analysis, which is a course that in theory I should have no business being able to hang in. But I actually found that a lot of the work we were doing, which is basically plugging in inputs with probabilities and then factoring out from there. My background in web work and my knowledge of HTML actually made that course super intuitive to me. And I was actually ended up kind of writing my own DA case study based off a situation that arose in my work with basically the financial decision of whether to pursue Sneak Season 3 or not. And, that's something I never thought would come naturally to me, but totally did. and same with global economics. It's quant, but it's narrative based. You're understanding motivations and outcomes and how one thing affects something else. That was intuitive to me. Accounting took some work. Accounting took some help. My LT, that was not intuitive to me. That did not, but I will say, by the end, I felt confident enough to be able to, approach any problem from a place of intelligence and knowledge. Did I feel great teaching someone else about it? Probably not, but that's totally fine. And for me, just being able now to, at my own work, look at our own quarterly budgets, looking at our P&Ls and being able to kind of understand what's going on. That has been, something I never thought I would get to, and I got to pretty quickly. So, and our accounting two professors I have to call out are just incredible. Justin and Shane are both. I'm having a blast in accounting two, which I should not be having a blast in, but I am, and I'm learning a lot and really enjoying it.
So that kind of brings me to my next question. I wonder, it's early days, right? You are about 5 months or so into the program. I wonder what the impact of your Darden experience has been for you thus far. Maybe it's a little bit early to say, but do you feel like you go into work, you're doing things, and is your perspective changing? Sounds like you've learned some things. I'm curious.
Yeah, there's kind of a twofold thing that's changed. One is the perception of me within the organization, which I was sort of flabbergasted by how quickly that changed. Hey guys, I'm enrolling in this. I received a fellowship, so I don't need a lot of financial support. Great. All of a sudden, I'm in on meetings with our sales and budget team. I'm being invited to meet with my former boss's boss to discuss managing my own site's budget, which I'd never done before. Talking about adding responsibilities to my plate. That happened instantly, just by kind of being in the program and really signaling to them that I was taking this seriously and I wanted to kind of understand that part of the media world. And then there's my own confidence, and I do think that I don't think people realize, especially in the journalism world, we have our own language. It's jargon. It's our own kind of way of speaking. And then our finance side has their own language and jargon and way of speaking. And that is actually hard to navigate that divide. I've sat in meetings where two teams on the same team working together, no idea what the other's talking about, just none. And for me, being able to kind of just pick up on the concepts, understand that, be able to kind of converse in that language has been immensely beneficial. And even working with our sales team to kind of understand deeper how they sell our content, to be able to kind of not only sort of listen with a blank stare, but kind of contribute to the conversation, understand deeper, offer ways that, while still respecting that boundary in journalism to help them do their jobs has just, it's already happening, which, I haven't been here long, but that's been huge just to start.
I appreciate that point around confidence. And also just, the perception within the organization, hey, Nate's going to get his MBA. Maybe we should include him in a few more meetings. There's something to be said for that too. But the confidence thing, that has come up quite a bit on the podcast. And I think for many of our guests, it was about being in class and having to speak up and having to have a perspective regularly and show up and maybe speak about things that you don't have a lot of personal experience with, but nevertheless, you're able to contribute, and just finding that way to contribute and to be engaged, and you find, gosh, I did fine. What else does that mean I can do? At least that's what's come up. Is that something that you've experienced?
100%. And for me, honestly, the confidence to ask questions, and being able to, get a budget from our finance team, which is pages long, and I think before this program, I might have just said like, okay, I don't even know where to start. I don't even know I'm just not going to say anything. And now just even having the confidence to write back and say, hi, I want to understand these line items because they're not clear to me. What does this mean? What does this entail? And they're delighted to walk through it. And I think even just the confidence to sort of have a base understanding of what something is and then ask for clarity and ask for clarification as opposed to just saying, I'm never going to understand this. I'm just not even going to bother. I think that has been great for me and something that happened right away, which hopefully by the end of my 2 years, I won't have to bug them with these questions and I'll just be able to understand it right off the bat. But, I think just being able to say, hey, I want to know how this works. Can you take a half hour and explain it to me? And I think that's, what good executives do is they recognize what they don't know, ask someone smarter than them to walk them through it, and then, use that to make decisions.
Appreciate all of those points. I think the thing that I always underscore with prospective students is that the lens in the program is a managerial one. The goal is not to make you an accountant. It is to help you understand how leaders, decision makers, use accounting information to make decisions and how you can have a perspective and ask good questions. So all really good points. Nate, we never miss an opportunity here on the podcast to talk about books and culture and these kinds of things. You are someone who has a background in English. You have a master's degree. I know you're reading a lot of cases these days, and work probably keeps you busy with the sneak. Do you have time to read for pleasure? Or are you doing anything for fun in the midst of the pandemic? A new hobby, pastime you picked up?
I'm trying to read. A lot of my reading now is sneak related in terms of just getting background on stories I think I might want to tell. And so, which is, probably not healthy. I should probably just read some fiction for pleasure at some point. But, right now I am reading a book called Fentanyl Inc., which is about the opiate crisis in the United States. And previously, I read an incredible book called Dreamland by Sam Quinones, which is both looking at that aspect, which is very kind of tied in with sports in that a lot of athletes suffered injuries in the early 21st century before doctors fully understood the addictive nature of a lot of these opioids and were prescribed it. And that's a story I've heard a lot of. I don't know if that's where we're going, but it is a story I feel passionate about. And that's something that I have been reading a lot on lately. And also just in our cohort, we have a ton of doctors, which has, I guess, maybe subliminally piqued my interest in kind of the medical field right now. But that's something I'm reading a lot about at the moment. And then I watched the sci-fi show, The Expanse, which is fantastic.
Yeah, The Expanse has been recommended to me quite a bit, and I'm interested in the books that you're reading. I'm always curious to hear how people are spending their time these days. I know that between work and life and school, probably don't have a whole lot of free time, but it's one of the questions I've enjoyed asking people here on the podcast. So last question, ask kind of the same last question of all of our guests. Wonder if you had a piece of advice for the listeners out there, anything that you would share based upon your experience?
Broaden your idea of who an MBA candidate is, I think. I never would have thought of myself as one. I never would have thought of myself as someone who could contribute to a top school like Darden or even be someone they'd be interested in. And that was my own closed-minded thinking. I think I had and what I will say is that of what my idea of what an MBA candidate was in our class of 100 and however many people, there's probably 3 people who actually fit that ideal, and everyone else is unique and diverse in different ways. Not knocking, but I just thought it was like, all right, these are guys who work in finance and are looking to take that next step in their career. That's going to be every single person in the program. Not every single person in the program. ex-military, doctors, other journalists, storytellers. We have so many incredible people that I think, and I know in my own field, I'm now trying to kind of preach the gospel, because I think, journalism needs more smart people who understand the business side of things if we're going to survive. And, I think that is, if you're on the fence, if you think maybe this is something for me, maybe I'm not the right candidate, maybe, you are, and you will find ways to contribute. I think that's the other biggest surprise I've had at Darden, is that I have found ways to help my classmates and contribute in ways that I did not think was possible. I thought I was going to be a papoose, just kind of clinging to everyone else who would then guide me through this program. And then we did a narrative storytelling part of this, and all of a sudden I was the most popular boy in school, which is great. And that's made me feel great that I could help classmates with their storytelling and their career stories. So broaden your mind, expand your idea of what an MBA candidate is, because it's a lot more different types of people than you'd ever imagine.
Well, I love that piece of advice. I think, as I mentioned previously, squares with so much of what we say to prospective students. And one of the, I think, biggest challenges with executive MBA recruitment is people more often than not basically take themselves out of consideration for they're like, oh, I'm not an executive. I don't have this job. I didn't have this particular line of study. And I so appreciate you're saying, like, broaden your idea of who can be in this kind of program. And that certainly resonates with us from an admissions standpoint. We really value difference and uniqueness and all of these kinds of things. And like I said, that's our goal when we put the class together. We want to hear from the students, oh my gosh, everybody here is so interesting. I've never been around people like this who do this particular thing. That's the most rewarding feedback for us.
Perfect. It's true. You're doing a good job of it.
Well, Nate, thank you so much for being here and for taking some time out of your day to join us for the ExecMBA podcast. We'll keep an eye out for season 3 of the Sneak. If somebody wanted to listen to the Sneak, I assume you're on all the platforms out there.
We're everywhere. First 2 seasons, wherever you get your podcast, just search the Sneak and we're there.
All right, Nate. Well, I hope you stay safe. Best of luck with Q3. Thank you again for your time.
Thanks, bud.
And that was my interview with Nate Scott, a first-year student in our Executive MBA class of 2022. As always, if you have any comments, suggestions, requests, anything you'd like for us to cover here on the podcast, we are all ears. We can be reached at exec, that's EXEC, MBA at darden.virginia.edu. Till next time, stay safe, be well, and thanks for listening.